"I don't think you can afford what we're selling here." The words hit like a slap across Marcus Thompson's face as he stood in the gleaming showroom of Prestige Motors, surrounded by $200,000 luxury vehicles. The sales manager didn't even try to hide his disdain as he looked at the black man in jeans and a polo shirt, completely unaware that he was speaking to the CEO of Thompson Automotive Group, the company that owned the dealership he was standing in. Let me take you back to 2:15 p.m. on a sunny Saturday afternoon in Beverly Hills, where assumptions about worth would cost someone everything. Marcus Thompson had built his empire one deal at a time. At 48, he was the founder and CEO of Thompson Automotive Group, a network of 23 luxury car dealerships across California, Nevada, and Arizona. His company generated over $2.8 billion in annual revenue and employed more than 1,200 people. But more than the numbers, Marcus prided himself on creating spaces where every customer, regardless of appearance, was treated with respect. Today's visit to Prestige Motors wasn't planned. Marcus had been driving through Beverly Hills after a lunch meeting when he noticed the dealership's grand reopening banners. He'd acquired Prestige Motors 6 months earlier as part of a $47 million expansion, but he'd never visited the location personally. The previous owner had assured him the transition would be smooth, that the existing management team understood Thompson Automotive's values of excellence and inclusion. Marcus decided to stop in unannounced, what the industry called a ghost shop. No entourage, no advance notice, no special treatment. Just a customer walking in to see how his staff performed when they thought no one important was watching. He dressed casually for his Saturday. Dark jeans, a navy polo shirt, and white sneakers. His only jewelry was a simple wedding band and a modest watch he'd owned for 10 years. He drove his personal car, a 3-year-old Honda Accord, instead of one of the luxury vehicles from his company fleet. To anyone watching, he looked like a middle-class professional who might be stretching his budget to afford a nice car. He looked exactly like thousands of customers who walked into luxury dealerships every day, hoping to be treated fairly. It was the perfect test. Prestige Motors occupied a prime corner location on Rodeo Drive, its floor-to-ceiling window showcasing an array of exotic vehicles that gleamed under professional lighting. A red Ferrari 488 GTB dominated the center of the showroom, flanked by a silver Lamborghini Huracan and a black Bentley Continental GT. The space was designed to intimidate as much as impress. Polished marble floors, modern art installations, and a champagne bar for VIP customers. Marcus pushed through the glass doors and stepped inside, immediately noticing the contrast between the showroom's opulence and the cool reception he received. 3 sales associates stood near the back wall, engaged in animated conversation. None of them moved to greet him. A 4th associate, a young woman arranging brochures on a display table, glanced up briefly, then returned to her task without acknowledgement. At most Thompson Automotive locations, a customer would be greeted within 30 seconds of entering. Here, Marcus stood for nearly 2 minutes before anyone approached him. Finally, a tall man in his mid-30s detached himself from the group at the back. His name tag read Derek Collins, sales associate. His smile was professional but cold, the kind that suggested he was doing Marcus a favor by walking over. "Can I help you find something?" Derek asked, his tone suggesting that Marcus was probably lost. "I'm interested in looking at some of your inventory. Maybe something in the $150,000 to $200,000 range." Derek's eyebrows rose slightly. "Those are some pretty expensive cars. What kind of financing are you looking at?" The question hit Marcus like a diagnostic test. In his dealerships, staff were trained never to assume a customer's financial situation based on appearance. The protocol was to ask about preferences first, performance, luxury features, intended use, before discussing pricing or payment options. "I was hoping to pay cash," Marcus said, watching Derek's reaction carefully. Derek's skepticism was obvious. "Cash? For a car in that price range? Is that a problem?" Marcus asked. No problem, Derek said quickly, though his tone suggested otherwise. Let me show you some of our more accessible options. He gestured toward a corner of the showroom where several entry-level luxury vehicles were displayed. Still expensive cars, but Derek's way of managing expectations downward. Marcus followed Derek to a silver BMW 3 Series, priced at $67,000. It was a beautiful car, but it wasn't what Marcus had requested to see. "This is a great starter luxury vehicle," Derek explained, his condescension barely concealed. "Very reliable, good financing options available, and the monthly payments are manageable for most people." "I appreciate the suggestion," Marcus said patiently, "but I was specifically interested in your higher-end inventory, the cars I mentioned seeing from outside." Derek glanced toward the Ferrari and Lamborghini, then back at Marcus. "Sir, those cars are, well, they're quite expensive. The Ferrari starts at $280,000, and that's before options. The Lambo is $220,000. Plus tax, licensing, insurance, we're talking about serious money." "I understand. That's why I'd like to see them." Derek hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I don't want to waste your time or mine. Those cars require serious pre-qualification. We need to verify income, run credit checks, that kind of thing. Maybe we should start with something more realistic." The word realistic hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus could feel the judgment behind it, the assumption that someone who looked like him couldn't possibly afford the cars he'd asked to see. "I'd still like to look at them," Marcus said, his voice remaining steady. Derek sighed, as if Marcus was being unreasonable. "Fine, we can walk over there, but I want to manage expectations here." They approached the Ferrari, and Marcus was struck by how different Derek's demeanor became. Where he'd been reluctant and condescending moments before, he now seemed nervous about Marcus even being near the vehicle. "Please don't touch the paint," Derek said quickly. "These cars are detailed to perfection." Marcus clasped his hands behind his back. "Can you tell me about the engine specifications?" Derek rattled off basic information, horsepower, top speed, acceleration, but his delivery was perfunctory, like he was reciting facts to someone who wouldn't understand their significance anyway. "Can I sit inside?" Marcus asked. "I'd prefer if we didn't," Derek replied immediately. "The leather seats are very sensitive to oils and moisture. We usually only open these cars for serious buyers." The implication was clear. Marcus wasn't a serious buyer. As Derek continued his reluctant presentation, a woman approached from the sales office. Amanda Walsh, 42, carried herself with the authority of someone accustomed to being the smartest person in the room. Her business card read Sales Manager, and her expression suggested she'd been watching the interaction with growing concern. "Derek, is everything all right here?" she asked, her eyes moving between Derek and Marcus. "Yes, ma'am, just showing Mr.—" Derek paused, realizing he'd never asked Marcus his name. "Thompson. Marcus Thompson." Amanda's expression didn't change. "Mr. Thompson was interested in looking at some of our premium inventory." The way she said premium inventory made it sound like Marcus had asked to see state secrets. "I see," Amanda said, her tone cooling. "Mr. Thompson, I have to ask, are you a serious buyer, or are you just browsing? These vehicles represent significant investments, and we need to make sure we're using our time effectively." Marcus felt the familiar burn of discrimination dressed up as business policy. "I'm very serious about purchasing a vehicle today." "Wonderful," Amanda said, though her expression suggested skepticism. "In that case, we'll need to go through our qualification process. Credit application, income verification, references from your bank. Standard procedure for purchases of this magnitude." "And if I told you I was planning to pay cash?" Marcus asked. Amanda's laugh was short and sharp. "Mr. Thompson, we're talking about cars that cost more than most people's houses. Cash purchases at this level require extensive documentation to prevent money laundering issues. We'd need to verify the source of funds, run background checks."
She trailed off, studying Marcus's casual attire again. "I have to be honest with you. I don't typically see cash buyers who present the way you're presenting today." There it was, the polite way of saying, "You don't look like you belong here." "I see," Marcus said quietly. "And how exactly do your cash buyers typically present?" Amanda realized she'd walked into dangerous territory. "I didn't mean anything personal by that. It's just that most of our high-end customers come with appointment schedules, arrive in luxury vehicles, dress for the occasion. It's a different clientele." "A different clientele," Marcus repeated. "And you've determined I'm not part of that clientele based on practical experience," Amanda said, her defensiveness growing. "We know our market, Mr. Thompson. We know who our buyers are." What Marcus didn't know was that Amanda and Derek's behavior wasn't accidental. 3 months earlier, the previous sales manager had been terminated for failing to meet revenue targets. Amanda had been brought in specifically to elevate the brand and attract a more exclusive customer base. Her interpretation of those instructions was to focus on customers who looked like wealth: designer clothes, expensive accessories, luxury vehicles in the parking lot. She'd implemented an unofficial screening process that prioritized certain customers over others, believing it was more efficient than wasting time on tire kickers. The strategy had worked, at least superficially. Average sale prices had increased, and the showroom floor spent less time on customers who didn't purchase. What Amanda hadn't tracked, or had chosen to ignore, were the complaints that had begun filtering up to corporate about customers feeling unwelcome or discriminated against. "Mr. Thompson, I don't want to waste your time. Why don't I show you some vehicles that might be more suitable for your situation?" "And what situation is that?" Marcus asked. She gestured vaguely toward his clothing. "Someone looking for luxury but perhaps with more modest budgetary requirements. We have some beautiful certified pre-owned vehicles, excellent financing options." "I'm not interested in financing," Marcus said firmly. "I'm not interested in pre-owned vehicles. I told your associate I was interested in cars in the $150,000 to $200,000 range, and I meant it." Amanda's patience was clearly wearing thin. "Sir, I'm trying to help you here. Those cars require serious financial commitment. The insurance alone on a Ferrari runs $15,000 to $20,000 per year. The maintenance costs, the registration fees, these aren't impulse purchases." "I understand that," Marcus replied, "which is why I'd like to see them." Amanda exchanged a glance with Derek, some silent communication passing between them. "Look, I'm going to be direct with you because I think you're wasting both our time. I don't think you can afford what we're selling here. I don't think you understand what you're asking to see. And frankly, I don't think you're a serious customer." The words fell like a sledgehammer in the pristine showroom. Several other customers looked over, sensing the tension. The sales associates who had been arranging inventory nearby paused in their work. Marcus felt every eye in the room watching him, waiting to see how he'd respond to being publicly dismissed and humiliated. This was the moment that would define not just his experience, but the future of everyone who had just witnessed it.
Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, his movements deliberate and calm despite the anger building in his chest. Amanda and Derek watched him, probably expecting him to leave or make some kind of scene. Instead, Marcus dialed a number he knew by heart. "Sarah, it's Marcus. I need you to conference in legal and HR immediately. We have a code red situation at the Prestige Motors location in Beverly Hills." Sarah Chen, his executive assistant for 8 years, didn't hesitate. "Connecting now. Legal and HR will be on the line in 30 seconds. Marcus held the phone so his voice would carry clearly in the showroom. "Thank you. And Sarah, I need you to pull the acquisition documents for Prestige Motors, specifically the management transition agreements and discrimination policy acknowledgments." "Already pulling them.
Sarah replied. "Marcus, are you safe?" "I'm safe, but this dealership isn't operating according to our standards." Amanda and Derek had gone very quiet, watching Marcus with growing unease. Other customers had begun to take notice, some discreetly pulling out their own phones. "Sir," Amanda said, stepping closer, "if there's a problem, we can discuss it privately in my office." Marcus looked at her calmly. "The problem, Ms. Walsh, is that you've just told me I can't afford the cars I'm asking to see. You've made assumptions about my financial situation based on my appearance, and you've done it publicly, in front of other customers." "I was just trying to manage expectations," Amanda protested. "No," Marcus replied, "you were profiling me. And in 30 seconds, you're going to explain to my legal team why a Thompson Automotive Group dealership is discriminating against customers." Derek's face had gone pale. "Thompson Automotive Group?" "That's right," Marcus said, as his phone buzzed with the incoming conference call. Marcus answered the phone and immediately put it on speaker. "Good afternoon. This is Marcus Thompson, CEO of Thompson Automotive Group, calling from the Prestige Motors location in Beverly Hills. I need to report a discrimination incident involving the sales manager and staff." The response was immediate and professional. "This is Rebecca Martinez, General Counsel for Thompson Automotive Group. We're recording this call. Can you describe the incident?" "I entered this dealership as a customer interested in purchasing a vehicle in the $150,000 to $200,000 range. I was dismissed, told I couldn't afford what they were selling, denied the opportunity to examine vehicles, and publicly humiliated based on my appearance." "And who were the staff members involved?" Rebecca asked. Marcus looked directly at Amanda and Derek. Amanda Walsh, sales manager, and Derek Collins, sales associate. The effect was immediate and devastating. Amanda's face went white. Derek stepped backward as if he'd been physically pushed. Other customers in the showroom had stopped what they were doing entirely, recognizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. A middle-aged woman near the Bentley display walked over. "Excuse me," she said to Marcus. "I watched everything that happened. They treated you terribly, and I'm ashamed I didn't say anything." A young man examining a Porsche added, "I've been shopping here for 30 minutes, and nobody questioned whether I could afford anything. The difference in treatment was obvious." Even the other sales associates were beginning to understand the magnitude of what had occurred. One of them, a young black woman named Keisha Williams, approached Marcus hesitantly. "Mr. Thompson," she said quietly, "I want you to know that this kind of thing happens here regularly, not just to customers, but to staff too. I've been trying to get management to address it for months." Marcus turned his full attention to her. "Can you be more specific?" Keisha glanced nervously at Amanda, who was still standing nearby, then back to Marcus. "Customers of color get treated differently. They get shown less expensive cars, questioned about financing, sometimes ignored entirely. I've tried to step in when I could, but—" She gestured toward Amanda. Ms. Walsh made it clear that questioning her methods wasn't welcome. "And you documented these incidents?" Marcus asked. "I tried to report them through HR, but nothing ever came of it," Keisha replied. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Not only was my dealership being discriminated against customers, but staff who tried to address it were being silenced. Within 20 minutes, the dynamics in the showroom had completely shifted. 2 Thompson Automotive Group executives had arrived from the regional office. Amanda Walsh and Derek Collins had been escorted from the building, and Marcus was sitting in the sales manager's office getting a full briefing on the dealership's operations. What he learned was deeply disturbing. Sales data showed a clear pattern. Customers of color were systematically shown less expensive vehicles regardless of their stated budget or preferences. Financing applications from minority customers were processed differently, often with additional requirements not applied to other buyers. Customer satisfaction scores were notably lower among Black and Hispanic customers, but these scores had been dismissed as isolated incidents. Most damning of all, there had been 17 formal complaints about discriminatory treatment in the past 6 months. All 17 had been filed with Amanda Walsh, and all 17 had been marked as resolved without any documented follow-up or corrective action. How did this pattern go undetected? Marcus asked the regional executives. The location was meeting its sales targets, one of them replied uncomfortably. When we acquired it, we focused on financial performance metrics. We didn't audit the customer experience data as thoroughly as we should have. Marcus leaned back in his chair and said, "So we were making money, and that was enough." "Sir, we had no idea." "No," Marcus interrupted. "You had data. You had complaints. You had warning signs. You chose not to investigate because the revenue numbers looked good." He stood up and walked to the window overlooking the showroom, where Keisha Williams was now helping a customer examine the Ferrari that Derek had tried to keep Marcus away from. "Effective immediately," Marcus said. "Keisha Williams is promoted to interim sales manager. She's demonstrated more integrity in one afternoon than the previous management showed in 6 months." He turned back to the executives. "I also want a complete audit of every Thompson Automotive Group location. Customer satisfaction by demographic, complaint resolution tracking, staff diversity metrics. If this is happening here, it might be happening elsewhere." "Yes, sir. We'll start immediately." "And I want a new policy. Any customer who enters any of our dealerships gets the same level of service regardless of how they look, what they drive, or what they're wearing. No more pre-qualifying customers based on appearance. No more assumptions about affordability. Every person who walks through our doors gets treated like they might buy the most expensive car on the lot."
3 hours later, Marcus finally got to examine the cars he'd originally come to see. Keisha Williams, now wearing a temporary acting sales manager badge, gave him a comprehensive tour of the Ferrari 488 GTB, complete with a detailed explanation of its performance specifications and customization options. "Would you like to take it for a test drive?" she asked, holding out the keys. Marcus smiled. "Actually, I'm more interested in seeing how you treat other customers. Mind if I stick around and observe?" For the rest of the afternoon, Marcus watched as Keisha and her team served customers with the kind of respect and professionalism that should have been standard from the beginning. Every person who walked in, regardless of age, race, or attire, was greeted promptly and treated with genuine courtesy. When a young Latino man in work clothes asked about financing options, he was given the same detailed explanation as a well-dressed white couple looking at the same car. When an elderly Black woman mentioned she was shopping for her granddaughter, she was shown the full range of available vehicles without any assumptions about budget. It was exactly what Marcus had envisioned when he'd acquired the dealership. Around 6 p.m., as the showroom was preparing to close, the young Latino customer approached Marcus. "Excuse me, sir. I couldn't help but notice you've been here all afternoon. Are you thinking about buying something?" Marcus laughed. "Actually, I already own something here. Everything, in fact." The customer looked confused until Keisha walked over. "Roberto, I'd like you to meet Marcus Thompson, the owner of Thompson Automotive Group. He's the reason you got treated fairly today." Roberto's eyes widened. "You're the CEO? The one who fired those other people?" "I'm the CEO, and yes, I terminated the employees who were discriminating against customers." Roberto extended his hand. "Thank you. I've been saving for 3 years to buy a car like this, and usually when I shop at places like this, well, let's just say today was different." Marcus shook his hand. Today was how it should always be. 6 months later, Prestige Motors had become one of the top-performing dealerships in the Thompson Automotive Group network. Under Keisha Williams' leadership, customer satisfaction scores had increased by 40% and sales had grown by 25%. More importantly, the demographic breakdown of customers now reflected the diversity of Beverly Hills and the surrounding communities. Marcus made a point to visit every Thompson Automotive Group location personally, conducting unannounced ghost shops to ensure the Prestige Motors incident was never repeated. He also established the Thompson Standard, a company-wide policy requiring identical treatment for all customers, backed by mystery shopping programs and regular audits. The story of what happened at Prestige Motors spread throughout the automotive industry, not through press releases or publicity campaigns, but through word of mouth. Customers who had been treated poorly at other dealerships began seeking out Thompson Automotive Group locations. Industry publications wrote about the company's commitment to inclusive customer service. But the most meaningful recognition came from the customers themselves. Online reviews consistently mentioned feeling respected from the moment I walked in and treated fairly regardless of my background. Roberto, the young man who had been shopping that day, eventually purchased his dream car from Keisha Williams. He brought his entire family to the delivery ceremony. Marcus kept a photo from that delivery on his office desk. Roberto and his family standing proudly next to a bright red sports car, all of them beaming with joy. It reminded him every day why the confrontation with Amanda Walsh and Derek Collins was necessary. Because sometimes the most important business decision you can make is refusing to accept that discrimination is just part of business. The changes at Prestige Motors didn't stay contained within Thompson Automotive Group. Other dealership networks began adopting similar policies, recognizing that inclusive customer service wasn't just morally right, it was profitable. The National Automobile Association invited Marcus to speak at their annual conference about building bridges to diverse markets. Marcus used that platform to share a simple message. Every person who walks into your showroom is a potential customer. Every person deserves respect, and every assumption you make based on appearance is a sale you might lose and a customer you'll definitely lose. Amanda Walsh never worked in automotive sales again. Derek Collins found a position at a small used car lot where he gradually learned to treat customers more fairly. But it was Keisha Williams who became the real success story, eventually opening her own Thompson Automotive Group franchise and mentoring other young salespeople about the power of inclusive service. Marcus still drove his Honda Accord sometimes, still dressed casually for weekend errands, still walked into businesses where people made assumptions about his purchasing power. But now, when those assumptions proved wrong, he had a network of 23 dealerships that stood as proof of what happened when you judged customers by their character instead of their clothes. The luxury car industry learned that dignity wasn't an expensive option, it was standard equipment. And that lesson, delivered one discriminatory encounter at a time, changed everything. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment about a time you stood up for what was right. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter. Because sometimes the most powerful engine you can drive is justice,